Hey everyone, I'm Jude Hotep, the goddess astrologer and alchemical initiatrix. This is our next episode of Alchemical Initiations. I'm here with Carrie Jeroslow, and she is a powerful white goddess doing amazing work in this world. And Carrie, will you tell us about who you are, what you do?
Yes, thank you so much, Jude, for having me here. And I love you and all of our conversations. I am a best-selling author, a podcaster, and a relationship diversity coach. So I'm really taking relationships to the next level, this reimagined of what intimate relationships can be from a place of diversity and inclusivity, and from understanding that we are all unique people. So if we sit in our uniqueness and really revel and celebrate our uniqueness, and we meet someone who is also in their uniqueness, what that equation becomes is a relationship that is unique. So I always say that every relationship we have is as unique as we are. And when we go into that, we can really just be free to experience, what each relationship is. It's going to be different depending on who we're joining with. And even if we're joining with ourselves, it's going to be a unique relationship, and really celebrating that uniqueness.
Yeah, I think what you're bringing to us with relationship diversity is so needed, so profound right now because everyone is changing. We have 250 different genders on Facebook. We have so many different ways of being in the world and being in relationships that people are owning and claiming and embracing now that want to be honored in this world. So it's very important work. What is Where are you at on this divine feminine journey and working with bringing in the masculine, and so important that there's not male bashing when we do talk about patriarchy, because I think that word's triggering to the masculine, to the divine masculine man. And do you see a lot of divine masculine men being able to step into that role? What are you
I
experiencing?
Yeah, I do. There are a lot of those, and I'll say that they are the men that are coming and out of the wounded male, because that's the male that's like, this is, I'm going to fit this person in a box. That's what I feel like this movement is, where we're moving, we're activating, is really breaking those boxes open and looking at our woundedness, choosing to see the wholeness of who we are, and from that wholeness becomes, is like birthed, the divine masculine and the divine feminine. And we all have our woundedness to heal and to release. And I feel like every time the in the box, for lack of a better word, like toxic masculine is just, you know like buried in that woundedness. So it takes a lot of courage to be birthed into this new world that we're coming into. And it takes people who are willing to go into the shadows of their own psyche and release all of the woundedness to birth their beautiful, truest self, which is really the truth of who we are. The woundedness is just like the clouds. So we're just wanting the clouds to clear into the sunshine and the truth and uniqueness of who we are. And so the men that I'm seeing are, when they come to me, they're these wounded children. When we can really like get underneath all of the um abusive speak and power control, what is underneath that is a very wounded child. And if we can go into that woundedness, what comes out is just this beautiful, emotional, sensitive, aware, masculine energy.
That's really fascinating because I think that it I don't know, you can say one journey is harder than the other, but I think that men are not supported, or there's not enough out there yet to allow men to know that this support's available, or please step into this part of yourself, or this is okay, it's safe. I think there's a lot of the patriarchy that makes it hard for men to do that. So it's really fascinating what you're finding, because I don't think we've seen in the world what the divine masculine can do. I don't think it's
Mhm.
really had a chance to ever be there. And do you find that the divine masculine is more just centered and grounded? It doesn't have to prove masculinity. Its masculinity is just evident. It just kind of rolls off of a man when they're in that place.
Definitely there's a confidence in being okay to sit in their emotional place.
Mm.
And I think that the divine feminine rising, which is what you talk about a lot, is the empowerment of the feminine to receive and kind of hold to the bosom, for lack of a better word, that wounded masculine, and to show that there is love and support. So there's like you know, a care when we as feminine, divine feminines rise up in our power of nurture and receive. And it definitely takes like both people coming together in a space of openness and curiosity and courage and acceptance and inclusivity. There will probably always be the men who can't break open those boxes and understand another way to be, just as there was probably the same on the feminine side. However, I do believe that there is a new generation. I see this in my boys. I have young boys, and I always wanted boys because I wanted to be a part of birthing this new masculine energy. And I also feel that with the fluidity of gender and orientation, is that everything's being blurred. And I think that's a really good thing. I think that we are all divine masculine and divine feminine. I talk about it as like the divine feminine is the divine receptor, the divine masculine is the divine activator, right? So we are receiving and acting. And I think the most powerful work in the world is the inspired action. So it goes back and forth between the feminine and the masculine. I think it is being birthed. And I also think it's a process, when there is threat to what has been in the past. There is, a little bit of a backlash and fear.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's kind of interesting about um you said a few different points. So I think it's interesting where the masculine, I think what we're going to see over the next couple of decades is going to be really fascinating with what the masculine can do in this new place. I think that many women are in their damaged masculine as well, which we've
Mhm.
seen, which is it's funky thing where in the 80s women carved pathways for women to in the corporate world and in different places by being in that masculine energy and that driving, striving type of action. Yet obviously there's been these repercussions on our health as women, and a lot of women have realized, awoken to that, and and have changed the way they do things and realized that there's this feminine way to be in business and not necessarily working for someone else, otherwise they might still have to work in that way. And so I see women still in a damaged masculine place that don't know, maybe haven't been exposed to it. They haven't had an awakening, so to speak. I don't think it always takes an awakening, but often it does. So it's interesting what we're all going through on so many varied journeys, but overall humanity is awakening to this new way to be. What I was gonna what I was gonna ask for your thoughts on is, it almost seems like wholesome isn't sexy. It's almost like we've been normalized and socialized in this culture for depravity to be what's sexy. It's what's on the movies, the whole victim, villain, savior complex is so perpetuated in movies and media and TV. And of course, that's where the narrative for society is often set. And so it's almost like wholesome isn't sexy, or these qualities that you just named about the masculine, it's almost as if that's not fun or adventurous, or that's not appealing to people. What do you think about that?
Yeah. I agree with you, which is why there is on a just foundational level, everything is needing to be reframed and relooked at, because we have gotten so skewed from from the spiritual aspect of like that we're all connected. You know, like everything that you just said is very much from an uh, wounded egoic perspective, meaning that you're separate from me, I'm separate from you. And that is the foundation that creates, you know, the victim power, sex, you know, all of that has been programmed that that's the juicy, sexy side of life. But I'll tell you, living in that spiritual place, that the knowledge that we are non-physical as well as physical, and that we are all connected. I'll tell you, I have had much juicier sex in that connective space than I have in the egoic, I'm separate from you space. And I think that it is like just all the systems and institutions that are breaking down everywhere. Exactly what you said is needing to break down too, to re-identify how we show up in this activated and more healed, wholesome perspective. And maybe it's reframing that word wholesome, because the wholesome, I think, is in the vocabulary, like it means, you know, plain, where wholesome is really about being in our wholeness, you know, being the truth of who we are. And so I think that it's almost like there's going to be a new dictionary that comes out with new terms and new connotations and new meanings, that we almost see that kind of really big, huge institutional reframe.
I think that's brilliant that it is like a reframing of it, and taking all of us that do it out in the world and keep perpetuating as a negative connotation, but keep facilitating the new meaning of these old terms that have meanings that don't serve us any longer, and also keep facilitating our own a new value system in society. I think that we've infiltrated the old system, the patriarchy, or the old value system, the old dominator culture, control, you know, status, hierarchical values or motivations. I think we've already infiltrated by being born at this time. And
Beautiful. Yes.
and that we are dismantling it and dissolving it from within, outside of it. I think people are building alternative societies everywhere across the world. I know you're hearing about this too, and all around it. But within it, people are within it saying no more as well to these old values.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, because like you and I are around similar, you know, generation and age, and the children that are coming in, you're seeing it with all of the fluidity of thought. It's not just fluidity of gender and sexual orientation, all that kind of relationship diversity that we're seeing. It is just the fluidity in one day I feel like this. This is how I identify. And the next day I feel like that. There's no box that can go around that. So it's our generation. And I always look at our generation as like the bridge keepers. You know, we are the ones that know what it was and know where it's going. And we bridge the two. And then the generations that are after us are just busting the bridge pretty much. They're just like, no, we're not going to be living in that. So it's really fascinating because my kids are younger and I have nieces and nephews who are, you know, in their 20s and 30s. And so even seeing it at that generation when they were in high school and the things that they were telling me, and now seeing the generation after that, it's so beautiful what is coming in. It is these beings who are saying, we are shifting things up, get ready. And I'm so thankful for it, and just doing my job to create that bridge between what was and what is coming.
I love that bridge keepers. That is really beautiful perspective. I got chills when you were talking about like what is coming. I just got chills. It is, right? It's a lot of people are in this doom and gloom place, and I'm constantly saying, stop perpetuating that view and that perspective. Have the clear vision of this new world that we are creating. And then just what you were saying about all of the souls coming in, they're coming in more awake. They decided to come in more conscious, to not have to awaken their consciousness here on earth, but to come in more conscious. And I absolutely know this can't be stopped. But there is this perpetuation of fear, but it's really about where do we focus? And I really am telling people and educating people often, don't put your focus on that doom and gloom. Don't listen to that. Don't buy into the fear. Look at what is changing and be part of the change. Stand up and own your value, own your authentic self, which you were talking about earlier. It's so
Yeah.
that we have so much. We have so many coming in behind us that are going to carry this forward. And then I love what you're saying about remembering the amazing things from the past. It is important to carry the gifts of what we've been through as humanity forward as well, and not forget, because it's like the forgetting is often the problem.
Absolutely 100%, Jude. I think, you know, I see my son who is so just clear on who he is. He's just so clear. And he's learning because he also has a body. So there's no perfection to it, but he's really clear about who he is. And I think that, you know, our generation is really going through that re-identification and understanding what it feels like to be in that fear space, and then to move into the hope space, and to be, I have those moments where I feel the re-identification process going on within me. And that's when I do my own shadow work, and I'm committed to going inward and really knowing what part of me is ready to be released that I don't want to take into this new time and space and energy, because it's important for me to do my work, right? Because as I shift and clear, then I create the space for others to reflect that back to me. So that's why I think having that internal practice is imperative.
I think this is a really important point, because there's people all in all places on the journey, but I do meet a lot of people who are not necessarily exposed to that world of doing inner work. It's more therapeutic only. They don't have this exposure to the coaching world at all. They don't have a concept for why coaching or what a coach does. And coaching is about upgrading. It's about being who you want to be in this life. It's about making the money you want to make, being the version of you. And we talk about work, and the work word has so much negative connotation because of the industrial era paradigm of pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and you got to work hard, and you're working, insane hours and things. So it has kind of a tough connotation that we need to redefine. And I've done it for myself. I went through a big phase of redefining the word work, or redefining the word responsibility for myself. And I encourage others to do that. And I think I find a lot of people who don't understand the value of doing the shadow work. They're like, I don't want to go into that stuff all the time. And it's like, it's really just the journey. And I love the point you bring up about we're clearing for the whole of humanity. We're clearing the morphogenic field of our collective shadow. We're clearing this collective history of all the death and the murder and the killing and the destruction into this new cycle. Because in astrology, we have these 26,000 year cycles. Now, it's Earth, those are Earth terms. On Jupiter, it would be a different amount of years. Time is relative, right? But But we're going to the cycle of light. The cycle of darkness, when it goes into its next cycle after this cycle, will be some sort of so-called darkness, quote unquote, that is not what we understand to be darkness now. It'll be a period of growth. It'll be a period of the unknown or discovery. And so I really encourage, what do you think about people realizing that shadow work or doing the inner work is really just a lifestyle and gives you so many gifts? Like there's so
So
much.
many gifts. Because Carl Jung says what you resist persists. So this is what I feel has created this really super toxic spiritual community of everything being roses and everything being all about love. And if we just love, everything, then we'll be fine. And it pushes down and creates resistance in the energy field of the emotions that are there. So, in opposition to that, or in place of that, I like to say what you allow moves. So, if you allow yourself to say hello, this is how I say it in my coaching, is like say hello to those emotions and those feelings. Hello, I see you, because those emotions want to be seen and heard, just like we as little children, and we as adults want to be seen and heard. And so when we don't do that work, we are creating that resistance, and it comes out in a one way or another. It can come out in disease in the body or sickness. It can come out in outbreaks or lashing out or whatever. It will come out. It will find a way to come out. It's like, it will eventually explode. And
Or
and
just
so why not just do it?
right?
Huh?
Or just in mediocrity, just when people are so unconscious, it comes out, but in a way they don't notice because it's just the same old mediocrity they've been living instead of
Right. And not living all of the incredible potential
yeah.
of what, there's something about that shadow work to me is fiery. It's like when I clear it, right, all of my cells come alive. They just come alive. And that's why I love to do, and why I always do in my coaching work, energetic clearing and energetic downloads, and work on the cellular energy, because our cells hold thought energy and physical, emotional energy in the cells of our body, in the cells of our, life, our soul, and clearing that, because I've had it done and I do it for others, or I would say I observe the universe or spirit or goddess doing the clearings, is so powerful, because again, they are there. So we either can say hello to them to clear them, or we can not and be in that life, exactly like you said, the life of mediocrity, the life of, untapped potential, is like it just sits there.
I don't think people know
And
what we can do, right? I don't think we have been a society that can do it, or it's only through that old patriarchal paradigm way, which is just not appealing. I don't think most women can do that anymore. I think that even if they're really a slumber, I don't think that their bodies can just handle that old way anymore. It's almost just,
well, that's the collective energy that I think is happening, is that it is, the energy is getting so high that if you can't do that, it will really manifest in some way. It will burst and blow. That's what I think the work you do and the work I do is so helpful for women, because a lot of people that I work with are like, I didn't even know that that was there. I had hidden it for so long. And now that I see it, is then you have conscious choice about how you relate to it in the moment, right?
yeah.
So that work that you do, I know that work that you do, it's so powerful, because it's really looking at that and giving women the tools to shift that stuff that maybe they haven't ever been shown what is really the depths of it. But I know, just like you said, the shadow work is where, did you ever read the book, Lights, what is it? Dark Side of the Light Chasers, is that what it is? It was a Debbie
Oh,
Ford book.
I've read some of her work, but I haven't read that one. I've read a different one, but yeah.
That was a big book in the 90s, and that was a really powerful book. That was one of the first books that really called out the shadow side and really supported the need to say hello to the shadow side,
Yeah.
that we all have that, and that the process, now think about, this was in the 90s, so it was like
Right.
really kind of before even this new generation of high vibrational beings came into the body, but it was really pretty monumental in terms of shadow work.
Yeah.
It was the first time I had heard of shadow work, and I was like, oh, see, that feels good and juicy and terrifying, but good and juicy.
Yeah, I think, definitely, I think the term originally came from Jung, and a lot of people don't know he, was an astrologer. He took his archetypes and
Oh.
the four, the four types, I don't have them off the top of my head, from, the four elements, earth,
Huh.
water, air, and fire. And then Debbie Ford's work, she was one of the groundbreakers that was kind of out more in the spiritual community on shadow work, I think, and definitely paved the way for it to be more commonly practice, known about, accepted. And I have that book on my list actually, because I've read a couple of her others. But and then shamanic work, that's just ancient indigenous practice that we've been doing as humanity for eons. And my lineage is indigenous, and so I do that shamanic coaching and that soul coaching. And it's interesting about, you brought up a point, but I lost it. But about what you do as far as working with the cells in the body. Hawkins, his work, I remember him saying in a talk, he wrote the book Power versus Force. He's got that body of work on the map of consciousness that we really base the consciousness map upon, his work and all of the calibrations he did, kinesiological calibrations. And so I encourage people to look into that work. But he said once that the cells don't have memory. So I bring up this for two reasons. One, that even our most respected or our guru, so to speak, or our great, some of our people that rose to greatness and brought important work to humanity, Debbie Ford, Hawkins, but also they're not, it's like owning our own authority to realize that not everything everyone says is always true, to understand our truth by going inside and owning that inner authority. I very much, you and I both know, whether we want to speak metaphorically or whatever, that the cells do retain memory, past life work, etc. And the work you do helps to replace old subconscious belief patterns, which I do in my work too. You do it through this beautiful energetic work that is so powerful. And you do past life work that helps people heal things that it's like, I've always had this problem, but I don't quite know why it's there. And I've done these 1,000 things, I've never gotten to it. And your work really answers that.
Thank you. I found that with my own work. So I did a lot of traditional therapy because my father had an affair when I was 12, and it shaped my entire view of relationships, and I just created these relationships like my father, the guy always breaking up with me or leaving me, and I did tons of therapy, and it just didn't, like, I got it here, but I didn't get it.
Yeah.
And so when I was introduced to theta healing, uh, which was developed by Vianna Steibel, that 3 months of that got it. And how did I know that it got it? Well, one, I felt different, but two, the men that came into my life after that were totally different. My relationship experiences were different. I was the one that was breaking up at some points, it's in some relationships. I was with men who wanted to be with me. It was like a total upgrade of my relationship experience from this energy modality, from going in and being super pointed and focused into the cellular memory. So that's what worked for me. But I love what you said, Jude, about having your own internal compass and your own internal barometer. Like, that might not feel resonant with you listening out there. And so what I know is that when I was at the reason why I started doing that theta healing is because I went through a divorce myself. And I remember a friend of mine who came to me and said, I've got two people who I feel called to share with you. One is a Vedic astrologer, one is this energy doctor guy. I can't even explain what he does. And it was my internal work and just going, knowing myself that was like, oh, that guy. I don't know why, but I need to go to that guy.
Yeah.
So it's about knowing yourself and creating the systems through self-care or whatever it is to get to know yourself. That's why I'm such a huge advocate on self-care, and self-care being really yummy and nurturing, because that is where we can say, well, that really resonates with me. That guy that I went to, I will tell you, he's so awesome but wacky that he probably wouldn't resonate with everyone, but
Right.
I really resonated with him. And so what you say about like having that internal intimacy with yourself is so imperative to go through the world.
And a lot of people are getting in touch with it newly, or a lot of people are just refining. And then a lot of people aren't really even understanding that they're in the mind too much. And what's funny is like oftentimes the culture socializes to that there's one expert, or they have to be certified a certain way, or have a certain look or appearance or certificate, and it's really actually what feels right for you, because one person that does a modality that's amazing may not be right for you personally, but another one that does the same modality might be, and so forth. It's really important to just have our own authority. And my point about Hawkins is that his work is revered. It's so paramount. It's been so important for our evolution as humanity, along with so many other women's work and so many other people in our work. But also, not every single thing is gospel. And I think
Yes.
going into, our authority to really stand for what's important. You talked about self-care. In this Mars and Gemini energy, holy crap, this is going to be 7 months of this energy. And so it is a hard time to do self-care. I think we really have to almost become very conscious and very stop and slow down. It's been a very pushing, urgent energy, August into September. And then at this time now in retrograde shadow and retrograde period of Mars and Gemini. So that self-care, it's even today with how much we've done to make waves, and to talk about how important it is. I know this is a big part of your work. It still is overlooked. It's still undervalued. It is still trivialized. And it is for a woman and for the feminine energy, what allows us to actually create at the highest level. When I rest, then I create more and I'm happier and I'm in that channel. What is it like for you?
Yeah, I think that it goes back to what we were talking about of that we need a new vocabulary, because self-care is such the, buzzword. There's even a statistic of how much in Google search that, the word self-care have catapulted over the last 5 years or whatever. And I I look at self-care, this is how I defined it, as a reconnection to self.
Mm,
So,
love that.
so it is imperative. Self-care is about connecting to me each and every day and having the space and making the space consciously and intentionally to connect to myself. What's going on with me? What's happening? So I'll go throughout my day and I have a million things going on. And I notice maybe 1 minute I'm feeling really good and 1 minute I am feeling really angry. And yet I don't know what happened to get me there. So my self-care is a moment for me to sit and say, let me just go back for a minute and be conscious in my thought. That's even self-care. Like, what happened? What got me from really happy to really angry? And so I talk about self-care as daily, short, but consistent.
Mm,
Because when I was trying to do self-care, I thought self-care was a yoga class or massage. I failed miserably. I had two young kids. There was just no way that was going to happen. No way. And so I would intend to do it, not do it, and feel like a failure. And that was a vicious cycle.
And that
So
then does the exact
yeah,
opposite of the whole point. Yeah. Brilliant.
exactly.
What you're saying is a reconnection. That is like a brilliant reframing. I think if people understood it in that way, it would get out of these like morning routines and you got to do this certain things. And it's like, no, just whatever, like you said, reconnects you into presence and consciousness and awareness. You're one of the most grounded people I know. I know you have this insane schedule, but I never see you frenzied or harried or in that expression or state of having a full life and a full schedule. And I think it's very
It is
indicative
my
of your
non,
practice.
well, thank you. I do have those frenzied moments, and I know through my self-care practice that that's when I need to pull back. And,
Mhm.
even this morning I said to my youngest, I need to go in the shower because I need to wipe, just need to clean off my energy. And he said, he's 8. He said, okay, mom, go into the shower and clean off your energy. You know, so, so if people connect with me, I have a really simple free guide I can send. That's a 3-step how to develop a daily practical self-care practice, because 3 minutes a day done consistently will set you up for feeling successful, and 2, really connecting to yourself on a consistent basis. It'll create the space for you to know I've got these 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and what usually turns into 10 minutes to really check in with myself and give myself a little bit of time to fill my own container. It is I started it in 2016. I was going to do 3 sun salutations. I love yoga. It feeds my mind, body, and spirit. So I started that was actually in 2016, December, that I made that awareness. So January 1st, 2017, I started, and I'm still going. I'm on my 2100th day of yoga. And sometimes it's really a relaxing yoga. So it's actually lately, it's been really super restorative. But because I'm tuning into myself, I know what my body needs. And I love having this space. It has changed my life. It creates space for inspiration, for processing, for reconnection, for just being myself. Like, I don't have to be anyone else in the world. I can just be me. I can be my angry me. I can be my joyous me. I can be my crying, sad me. I can be my wounded me. I can be my healed me. I can be anything that I am in that space because it's purely for me. And it is really empowering.
That I love the way you talk about it. I don't think that way of viewing it is really out in the world, to be honest. I think it's always seen as this thing I have to do. So it just feels like more tasks and more to-do lists. And I think we are so resistant to slowing down, calming down, quieting down as a society. But the
Mhm.
way you've talked about it, I'm like called in because it's a different reframing that is really important, I think, to realize that it's time where you get to just be with yourself. I think we're craving time to just be with ourselves and let ourselves meander and putter and do whatever we need to do to connect, journal, read a little passage, look at an oracle card, or do some movement and have it be this free flowing little this reconnection time. But I don't think I haven't seen a lot of people knowing how to do that. It feels like you have to do another task, you have to do a whole yoga sequence or routine for an hour. And it's like, what about, like you said, 3 sun salutations, which will get you in your breath and your body and your heart. And then all of a sudden you'll start listening for what your body needs. A cup of tea, I need to journal and get all this out. The emotions come. So yeah.
Exactly. And isn't that the reframe that we're talking about from the masculine do unconsciously, and
Unconscious.
shifting into the divine feminine of giving to ourselves, receiving, creating space, knowing that I'll tell you, I am a much better um, active participant in my life because I take that time to receive that care from myself, and I can do more. People ask why I do more, how can I do what I do? I
Mm.
have an hour and a half now. This is because I've been doing it for 6 years. I have an hour and a half self-care practice from 5 to 6:30 a.m. I am a theater person. I never thought I could be a morning person, but I really challenged myself this year to do that. And I love that 5 to 6:30 a.m. time. I'm usually completely by myself and I look forward to it all the time. That doesn't mean that sometimes I show up and I don't want to be there. And it doesn't mean that sometimes I see it as another to do on my list, but I keep showing up. It's like working through that resistance to say, no, I know in the cumulative, look that it is really going to serve me. So I'm going to show up today, even though I might fall asleep on my mat doing yoga, or I might think that I didn't show up in the way that I should. I think all of those shoulds and obligations and expectations is another part of that toxic masculine energy, that old paradigm of this is how it should look. And it's why I love relationship diversity, because the way I talk about it is just like being your unique self and being okay with it, and being okay that one day I showed up and I wasn't really all there. That's actually just really okay.
Yeah,
And showing
like
grace and compassion for self.
right, because we can often show compassion for others, but we aren't practiced at showing it for ourselves and letting ourselves off the hook. We think it equates to not advancing forward, but we're not actually doing the things that really do advance us forward, like doing the emotions work, doing the past life work or the shadow work. And it's like doing it as it arises, because like you said, as it arises, it's meant to resolve and release. That's why it's arising now and it's supported now. You talked about the word should. I heard this recently and I thought this was brilliant, that some people who work with non-violent communication will say that should's actually a form of violent communication. That isn't that good?
Definitely. Absolutely. It's violent to yourself, right?
Yeah. And to
Yeah.
others of saying
Yeah.
like this, like what is not okay. It's basically the underground of should is what is not okay. It's not acceptable. You need to be different than you are. There's a way to be conformity, which is the shadow side of Aquarius. And we're moving into this Aquarius era. We need to not all go into gray spacesuits and do this conformity. It needs to be unity through diversity.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That is so powerful. Yeah.
It's
Wow.
the other thing you touched upon is emotions. We talked about it a lot, and I wanted to just go to that briefly. That I think emotions, I think we're moving from the amygdala fear brain response to an emotional self that just knows their yes and no. I think the kids coming in just know their yes and no very, very clearly compared to a lot of adults. I think that we're moving into that energetic, spiritual, emotional place as a species. That's where we're evolving to. And emotions, I think people are so confused about them. And so I love it that we both do emotions work and are helping people to know they're okay and they don't last forever. They're transitory, and it's different from your actual state of consciousness, which we often denote through emotional words. Um, just yeah, like, do you get a lot of resistance with your clients, with people that you talk to just in the world? Do they seem to know emotions are okay? Because we need to make it more readily part of our world as society and culture, that there's a way to work with them. You can become
Yeah.
masterful with them.
Absolutely. Emotions are so important. They are the windows to our heart. And if we don't allow ourselves to feel, it's like there's a part of us that we are ignoring or repressing. And I'll tell you, in my clients, I have the range. I have a gamut of really super emotional people who are emotional but were never accepted in their big emotions. And this is how I talk about it with my kids: is your big emotions are okay, and saying hello to them. I hear you. I hear you. I love you. I accept you, and it's okay. Just saying that, because even the best intentioned parents, and I'm guilty of doing this, is like when our children have big emotions and it's overwhelming because I've had something happen in my business, or I've had this interaction that was really challenging, or I'm dealing with my shadow stuff, and then the children are super emotional and I don't have the capacity to handle their big emotion because I don't have the space to process my big emotion. And so even the best intended parents are like, don't feel that way. or
Mm.
like, I can't listen to that right now. Or even something my father said to me is, I said, when, you know, the whole affair was happening and my dad was marrying decided to marry the woman he had an affair with. And I said, I'll never accept her ever in my whole life. And he said, never is a long time. And he didn't even say it meanly, but I interpreted it as my emotions were not okay to feel. I don't think he meant it that way, but that was how I interpreted it. And so this emotional work is imperative for us to do our healing
I
work.
think what is so interesting about the emotions is a lot of people don't realize that simply getting present with them and saying, oh, you're feeling angry, like to children, if a lot of parents don't have that skill that needs to be cultivated, but just getting down at eye level and saying, oh, you're feeling sad, oh, you're feeling angry right now, they feel heard and often just go run off and play pretty quickly. And it's
So
I often
true.
right? I
Yes.
often teach my clients to look at their emotions as children, not inner child work, but look at their emotions as children, where you just get down to eye level with your own emotion and say, oh, I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling this, identify it, and give yourself the time to sob it out, cry it out, scream it out, shout it out, break something, whatever, in a container that's safe, and that feels good. But and do that, and they actually begin to be something that you release quickly and easily. You have your go-to methods, you identify them all, so you have the vocabulary of the hundreds of emotions we have, which some of them are very odd terms. Like unfair, we in this culture say, oh, life's not fair. Actually, unfair is just an emotion that we feel sometimes, and it can be released and felt, and it's fine. And then you
That
don't
is
feel that
super
injustice.
powerful. Yeah, that is super, super powerful. I love that. Um, that idea of the emotions being a child that wants to be heard. I had this experience exactly with my 13-year-old. He's got hormones going on, and so he's super emotional. When I am not in a place where I can process it, and I tell him, no to what he's feeling, it goes on for an hour. But there was a couple times that I've just allowed him to be really angry. And I say, go for it, feel it. And there's some pretty ugly things that come out of his mouth. Um, but they pass really fast.
Yeah.
It's like he moves through it and then he comes very fast. Mom, I'm so sorry. I love you. I'm so sorry. Thank you
Mm.
for listening to me. It just shifts really fast. And so, yes, we want to be in a safe space. We want to have a safe container, absolutely. But there is, our own emotions are exactly like that.
The old style of parenting was like, oh, you disrespected me by saying those things. But it's that if they were just given the rage room, or the container to express whatever, it's like we all have the mean things. We're all rude, we're all impolite, we're all impatient, we're all these things at different moments in time. It's not our who we are as soul. It's a transitory expression of the human condition, being a human, having emotions. They're all okay. A lot of people are taught anger and rage aren't okay, and then it just makes it have more gravity and intensity.
Absolutely. And then it comes out in many
Passive
different ways that
aggressive
you're
ways,
saying.
or all kinds of other ways. Yeah.
Or directly aggressive ways. Yes.
Or directly aggressive. I love that. Yeah. I wanted to talk about this one last thing, and then we can, wrap up, unless there's some other threads that were fun for you. But this is something I notice about all of us women rising up. One thing I notice, and I'm hoping to discuss so women can notice it and perhaps feel the ability to move through it, that when we are really in our solid self-worth and our power, it often intimidates or causes other women who are just gaining ground or gaining footing or stepping into new levels of their own self-worth or security or power, confidence, etc., almost feel to back down or shy back down or dim back down again. And it's like, no, come up. And it's this weird dynamic where no one's doing anything to the other, but it's that self-worth is so triggering for people. But even less than the word trigger, more just, it almost feels like it's so beyond where somebody that is just getting some footing in self-worth and confidence is, that they almost feel to dim down again. I've had it happen with clients or people in communities or just people in the world. And it's like, I'm not going to tamp down my worth and value and my confidence and being a person, a personality in the world, but also, what do we do about that? I've been noticing it. And
that's an old paradigm too. And I've had to really look at that specifically as an empath is, I learned not through any kind of conscious education, more subconscious programming, that in order to help other people feel good, I need to meet them where they're at
no, yeah,
and do the healing in that place. And what I've learned is, as I've gone into this over the last 15, 20 years, is that only enables them to stay where they are. So it is holding the vibration of where I am. Okay. So holding the vibration and giving them and opening the space for them to meet me there. So that may or may not happen, but in my work, I can hold the vision of their truth and sitting in that place of holding the vision of their truth. Now, if it activates me or triggers me and I go through feeling like upset that they're in that space and I'm in this space and I don't want to do that, like that kind of thing, then I have the opportunity to go within and see why it's triggering me.
yeah,
Okay. And that's my work to do. But if I can hold my vibration and give the invitation through holding the vision of their truth for them to come up there, great opportunity. So I just had this interaction with this person who made a really just unconscious comment about something that was a product maybe that I had. And it was very unconscious. And instead of getting triggered and doing a separation, I invited him into the conversation and asked him more questions. And what I found was that was an actual experience that invited him to a new vibration. And by the end of our conversation, we were shaking hands and saying, thank you for having this conversation. I feel like a different person because of this experience that we just had. And so I think it's both people. It's both people not shutting the other person out. It's creating space and opening yourself to invite that person to meet you there through conscious communication, through invitational communication, and non-defensive or non-defensive communication, not
yeah.
because when we defend ourselves, right, then they feel like they have to match that defensiveness, and it creates that separation and divisiveness.
Right, right. I think that there's a difference too between someone being in their expertise and being in their competence and their power than superiority. Superiority is definitely, that superiority inferiority complex is definitely part of the patriarchal system, and it's a part of just the journey on the spiritual awakening journey where we learn things and then we feel all superior, like, well, everybody should wake up and just get it. And it's just like this kind of spiritual arrogance that's just a phase of the journey. And I try to encourage people to understand it's a phase that we go through, but come out of that phase, don't stay there, but also you don't have to admonish yourself for being there or others, and just know it's a phase of the journey. I think what you talked about the curiosity is, I found that so powerful, to be curious about people, because it allows their wisdom to even surface up from within them that they never got a chance to even know is in there, because no one ever gave them a chance to grow. No one was ever curious about what they had to say or who they were. We've often been be something in society instead of being on this evolution of becoming always again, reinventing and renewing this new version, this new upgrade. So I think this this new paradigm, and like what I'm really talking about a lot lately is really getting out of this destination focus and focusing on evolution and realizing that life is evolution. It completely takes a lot of the old issues out of the way. Time and urgency and goals and having to have the dream on the horizon. It's like, live the dream right now. I'm not trying to get to no horizon place. Like, I want to live it right now, have everything right now. Like, we don't have to wait. We don't have to work and
Yes.
toil. And
That is so powerful. And that is that's the spiritual perspective that's different from the egoic 3D perspective. That right there, that invites in forgiveness, acceptance,
yeah,
compassion, all of the things that you're
that we're
talking about
learning all
is
the
that
time.
exactly. And that is really the foundation of a lot of my message is that evolution that we are, if you can really dial in and download, I am on a path of evolution. It does so many things, just what you said, so many things just fall away.
Right? Yeah. It just, they're just not there anymore.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Was there anything, any threads that came up that you're excited that you wanted to jam on before we before we wrap up?
Yes. Okay. So I wanted to come back to this because this is something that is a vocabulary thing that you said you've reframed, and I want to know what you reframed it to because I struggle with this, and it is the word work because
Mm,
it comes in homework, right? Homework. And it does have such a heavy connotation to it of, oh, it's going to be hard. Work is like synonymous with hard. So what do you reframe that as? Well, how can we do a whole reframe of that word?
yeah, I think, for me, my own journey with it, because I haven't necessarily thought about it in a way to teach it, but my own journey with it was really, I just bucked and resisted the whole thing. And I was like, no, I'm not even thinking about it that way. I'm going to think about it as play and really going through this process of like, the work that I do in the world is what I love. I'm doing it on my own time frame. I'm doing schedules in my own way. I don't wake up with an alarm. I don't do a schedule like most people. I do for some things that I need to, but I do a schedule that's really the way that I want. I have set client hours. I have certain things set. I have minimums, but I don't do just a regimented calendar. It doesn't work for who I am. I'm Pisces rising. Like, it does not work.
Mhm.
So I went through all these iterations of trying different methods to make things function and realizing, and so it was just like almost bucking and completely getting rid of the word work for a while and using the word
Mhm.
play and all these different phases I went through, the word responsibility. I did a lot of reprogramming work, belief reprogramming, and actually reprogram that word, where you do it with theta energetic work. I do it with, reprogramming during the subconscious belief in a different way, but we do the same thing.
Yeah.
And so I did that, that self-coaching work, that inner work. And also, I think for me, I've always loved self-development and spiritual growth. I've always loved that. So for me, like when I reframed it, that the work, the business is play,
Mhm.
and also living it that way, that like I do it because I'm inspired to do it. I don't have have to's in my business. I have minimums, I have daily business minimums, but I get myself into a state where I want and desire to do it, and I'm doing it because I want to, not because I have to.
Mhm.
And I have even went through periods where I let something go that needed to get done to show myself that I don't bleed. Nobody bleeds. The world doesn't end. I don't lose my audience. I don't lose money, because I needed to get out of the programming from the culture that you have to do things or you won't make it. I had to
Mhm.
go through phases for myself and literally expose myself to the fear that I'll lose an audience if I don't get the podcast out exactly on time. Now, do I like that feeling of not doing it? No, there's so much reward. Going through those phases allows me to actually really realize that I love making that podcast happen at that time and batching and all these things, that I ended up, it just reframed the way that I went to it. And I really put work as the inner work we do to be able to be in the place for the business and the life and the kids, the things you got to take care of, to be fun. And I also re-choose them again. I'm like, okay, you know, with a child or with an animal or a responsibility, it's like, would I choose this again? If not, I got to move my life around and maybe get it out of there or do something different. Or I re-choose it again on purpose, consciously, to say, I want this in my life. I'm doing this on purpose. I'm not making this a big hassle. I'm not making this problem or this have to. I'm choosing it again to know I want this in my life. Sometimes my rabbits over the years have been a little tricky. They're exotic animals. They're tricky animals to have. And sometimes it's just felt like a burden. And I've had to be like, no, I want them in my life. I'm choosing them again. I'm not going to make them a burden. I'm going to make that conscious choice that I want them here. So I'm happy to do XYZ to make that happen. So there was a lot of
I,
phases, a lot of work.
I love I love what you said of the reprogramming, because I think it's the reprogramming from the expectation and the obligation to the choice, to the
Yeah.
conscious choice. So unconscious choice to the conscious choice, to make it really easy. But it is really like the work feels like expectation, heavy obligation, whereas choice feels empowering, right? And motivating and inspiring. And I'm going to go do that download when we get off.
I,
Oh.
it's funny. It's a lot of people, you know, are scared of, like, you know, losing a house or losing money or losing this or losing that, all these things. And it's like, okay, maybe you can't go through the exposure therapy of actually losing the thing, because maybe that just won't work for your life, but almost there's something that happens in doing that, because you realize that the world doesn't end, that you actually realize, I experience realizing all of the resourcefulness that I am. And that's the thing about women and divine feminine. We are incredibly resourceful, empaths, sensitives. We are incredibly resourceful. And most people never get the credit for that, because that is not valued in the old system.
Right.
And that's Taurus. We're in a Taurus North Node until next summer. So Taurus is about resourcefulness and the resource of yourself to make money, making money, that motivation of your own creative works, and realizing that that's all wealth, versus making money from that old system of, I got to do XYZ to make wealth. That doesn't even work. So
Yeah. Wow, it's such powerful conversations. It really can shift people's experience in the world. And, like the idea of what you said of losing everything, you realize how resourceful you are. I think that's what people talk about when they have these Kensho moments, these moments where it's just, everything, or some big, huge tower moment happens
yeah.
to show you who you really are. I don't think spiritual awakening has to be that. And for some people, who are really walking unconsciously, I know in my life, I've had tower moments. The divorce, my parents' divorce was a tower moment for sure. Right there, I would have been a very different person right now had that not happened at 12. So although I was, it was really hard in the 10 years that followed, it made me who I was today. That's how I came to forgiveness with it. But we do learn how resourceful we are.
I don't think the tower moments are necessarily bad. I think it's the way that we narrate them
Yeah,
in society as catastrophes and disasters. I think that's the
agreed.
issue. Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely.
Because it's like dark and light, they're a part of each other and transform and merge. This quote, I've been wanting to share this on Alchemical Initiations. I found this quote: light and dark are not opposing forces, but transforming and resolving halves of the same wheel.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yes.
I don't know
Yes.
who else said it off the top of my head, but somebody said it, not me. But
It
it is
is, it's the yin
great.
and the yang, right? It's the yin and the yang. It's the, we in tarot, they talk about the fool's journey. The fool's journey is from the fool to the world. It is, and part of that is the tower moment. It's all just a part of the journey, and a part of, to bring it back, that our soul evolution, what
Evolution
we are
versus
here to do.
destination. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, if we can just change the whole paradigm of the way we look at things in this world, so many problems completely dissolve. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Ah,
good. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. I love this so much. We both have flowers in the back. We're both Tauruses. Um,
yay.
and so tell us about where people can find you, what you're doing in the world.
Absolutely. Well, they can always go to my website, which is my name, carriejeroslow.com. I would also love for people to go check out my podcast, Relationship Diversity Podcast. And we are having super innovative conversations about reimagined intimate relationships, and really focused on the idea that every relationship is as unique as you are. So connect with me through my podcast. I also have a free relationship diversity guide, and we just love to have you in my community.
So Relationship Diversity Podcast is the name of it, and they can find it on iTunes, Spotify, all the places.
All the places. Yep.
All right, great. And then you have their free guide, and they can get that at your website.
Yep.
Okay. CarrieJeroslow.com, y'all. Jeroslow. And yes, Jeroslow. And very
Yes.
unique name.
Ukrainian.
Yeah. And I just appreciate you being here so much. Thank you, Goddess, for being here.
I adore you. Thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing in the world.
You love. Everyone, we will be back with our next episode of Alchemical Initiations. I am so grateful for you all to be here. Please like, share, and subscribe if you are really getting so much value from these episodes. Sending you lots of love, and we'll talk to you on the next episode of Alchemical Initiations.